Okay, we're continuing with quotes. We're going through all the great authors. We're going from, in alphabetical order. Now we're on Wm Deresiewicz. This guy was a professor of English at Yale, and he wrote a very good book called Excellent Sheep, The Miseducation of the American Elite. And I was interested in these things because of my personal experience, having gone to Stanford, having been at Harvard, and, all the things that I saw there and how it affected me, etc. So he's a very quotable guy. Here's some of the things I really liked from him. He said, "Great teachers make reference to their personal lives, how something affected them, the significance of it." And I thought that was a great quote because I noticed that's true. Your average crappy teacher just reads from the book, says you have to know it for the test, and there's really nothing personal about it. You just do what you have to do to try to do well in the class. Whereas a great teacher will tell you, this is what happened to me when I was young, and I screwed up, and I wish I had done this, and you learn something from that. And so they make it personal. They make it fun. They've got enthusiasm, all that. It's sort of like a social experience, not just information being conveyed to you. And I know Jordan Peterson had a similar quote too. He said, you should talk about how a certain topic relates to your life. That makes it more real. That connects your experience to the thing and helps the listener process it. Okay, the other thing I noticed about Deresiewicz, he often writes with this typical sentence structure. I would actually say, just like you can say a Hemingway sentence is very concise, a Faulkner sentence is very long, Oscar Wilde sentence is often chiasmus, Voltaire sentence is often antithesis. With Deresiewicz, I'd say his sentence, this is his best sentence. They typically follow this format. X is not about Y, but about Z. And everywhere where I've got blue ink, that'll be an example of that type of sentence. Okay, his first quote is, "I believe librarians, like English teachers, sit at the right hand of God." Okay, that's funny, and I know he knows it's funny because whenever somebody does something themselves, they often say that is the greatest thing. Like Percy Bysshe Shelley used to say, "Poets should rule the world," and he really meant it because people always exaggerate their own thing that they do. Just like Aristotle had said, thinking is the most godlike thing about humans, and philosophers think the most. Therefore, philosophers are the most godlike of men. So it's pretty typical. People think whatever they do is the best thing. Okay, here's his sentence, and this is with the Deresiewicz format. X is not about Y, but about Z. He says, "Writing is not just about conveying information, but about connecting with the reader on a deeper level." And I think that's a good quote. I mean, basically, I spent a ton of time studying writing. I wrote an entire book about it, rhyme, rhetoric, and logic. And conclusion I came to is that you want to just write like you're talking to an intelligent friend. Because when you talk to an intelligent friend, you don't say something unless it has emotional impact, or is real useful or something. There's something to it. You're not just like reading like a monotone. Okay, in good writing, it moves you, and Voltaire had said things along those lines as well, Okay, so Deresiewicz continued. "Colleges should remember that selecting students by GPA more often benefits the faithful drudge than the original mind." Yes, I think there's some truth in that. I mean, it's good that you can get good grades. It shows that you got the ability to memorize large amounts of information, but it's not the same thing as being a good thinker. Okay, all doctors had to be good students to get into med school and to finish med school. But that doesn't mean they're really able to think well or have any type of imagination whatsoever. I can tell you the vast majority of doctors I know, they don't read. They don't read hardly at all. They're busy with their family, and that's understandable. They're tired. They work long hours with the clinical stuff. But if you don't keep reading, you don't keep learning, you're stagnant. Okay, he continues. "Colleges cater to credentialed conformists." Yeah, a lot of people tell me that. Their experience of going to college, and especially to grad school, it's just, everybody sort of acts the same, and it's real boring, and they often just, cave into whatever peer pressure is the norm for their professors and for the institution, And I had I think in a way, an advantage. I came from hanging around with wrestlers. And in the wrestling world, everything's kind of brutal and honest. The best wrestler at your weight class in the room, he kicks the crap out of everybody. And there's nothing deniable about that. Either you can beat him or you can't. And wrestling is very honest in that way. So I always like being around wrestlers. Everything is honest and out in the open with a wrestler. Okay, he continues. "The problem is that students have been taught that all education is doing your homework, getting the answers, and acing the test. Nothing in their training has endowed them with the sense that something larger is at stake. They've learned to be a student, but not to use their mind. Yeah, to be a good student, you just have to memorize stuff and take a test. Like I said, I know some doctors that are considered the best doctors around, the best internal medicine doctors. These guys both have IQs probably about 155. They can memorize the textbook pretty fast and repeat back whatever it said. But I can also tell you something. Neither one of them studied nutrition, epidemiology, toxicology, and in my opinion, their medical knowledge is kind of a joke. All they can do is prescribe drugs from the conventional medical book. They don't know what causes disease. They don't know how to cure disease. So, if you really want to be great, you have to go beyond that. You have to read the adjacent fields, and you have to start thinking about your own individual thoughts and materials. Okay, so more quotes from Deresiewicz. Here's another one with the format. X is not about Y, but about Z. Education is not just about preparing for a career, but about preparing for life. Yeah, that's the other thing, too. You don't want to just get good grades in school. You want to learn about money. You want to learn about social skills. You want to learn about money skills. Those all things are really important. And you want to learn about health skills. Okay. All right. Thinking means concentrating on one thing for long enough to develop an idea about it. It does not mean learning other people's ideas or memorizing a body of information, however much those things may sometimes be useful. Thinking means developing your own ideas. Yeah, and that's very much like Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer said, when you're reading, you're basically spending time with other people's ideas. Thinking is developing your own ideas, taking all that material and whatever other experience and knowledge you have and intuition you have and putting it together into something. That's more valuable eventually. Okay, great minds do not think alike. They think for themselves. Another format sentence. To live a fulfilling life, you must have the courage to follow your own path, even if that means going against the grain. The only way to grow is to step outside your comfort zone and to embrace the unknown. Yeah, you have to sometimes just go out and figure things out. And I can also tell you, I know from experience, when I start figuring things out is when I just ask a simple question. What causes dementia? Why are there so many cognitive decline, demented patients? And then I say, well, they all have diabetes and hypertension. Well, what causes diabetes? What causes hypertension? And then you start going through that. And all of a sudden, I found, oh my God, all the conventional medical books are wrong. And then when I started finding the answers, from the McDougall lectures, then Hemsworth, Sweeney, Shulman, Brownlee, Taylor, and the others, I'm like, wow. I learned all about diabetes, and all of a sudden I know more than all the endocrinologists. And that's how you get yourself to a special path, when you get off the regular conventional track. The conventional track is too predictable, and it often has an ulterior motive. Okay, Deresiewicz continues. It is not the job of truth to make us feel good. It is the job of truth to be true, and it is our job to deal with it. In my experience, when you tell the truth, people get really mad at you. They get pissed off at you because a lot of people make money off of lying to other people, off of selling something. They don't want you contradicting them. Also, a lot of people, what I've seen, they live in a real simple, narrow world, and they like to feel that everything is okay. And they don't like being told, no, things are not okay. They're powerful people trying to, side your ethnic group. That's not good, okay? There's powerful people putting crap in your food that makes people sick. That's not good. There's powerful people lying to your relatives and friends and family about the treatment for the disease that prevents them from getting better. That's not good, okay? Okay, Deresiewicz continues. Education is not just about acquiring knowledge, but about discovering yourself and your place in the world. Okay, here's another one. You cannot truly understand others until you understand yourself first. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of wisdom with that. I can also tell you, for a guy, I took all these psychology classes and I would get A's in them, but I don't think I learned much psychology. Then when I started reading books about how to understand women, how to talk to women, I'm like, wow, that's what happened to me with my last girlfriend. That's why she broke up with me. I understood it. Those were really good. It's like the college professors all stink. They're all, PC, conformist, wimpy. They can't tell you anything useful about male-female relationships. They can't even tell you the difference between a man and a woman. Okay, but you start reading all these dating coach type guys, they start getting right to the point. You're like, well, gee, that's true. And then also, it was real helpful to me reading all these motivational speaker guys like Brian Tracy. And I learned about public speaking, about presentation, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence Others. Because for me, a lot of these social skills, I kind of had good social skills when I was in high school, but then when I was in college, all I ever did was wrestle and study. And I lost my social skills. It was kind of an autistic environment being at Stanford. There was like no parties practically, hardly ever. A party was a big event once every couple of months. So anyways, you got to study whatever it is that you need to work on. All right, let's continue. He says, there is now a robust literature on the nature of happiness, and it converges on a pair of observation. Beyond a moderate level of material comfort, happiness consists of two things: feeling connected to others and engaging in meaningful work. Okay, and I would say that's part true. Yes, we like to feel whatever we do as our main job is meaningful, and that makes us happy. But it's also quite often the case, to do something that pays money, you got to do something that's not fun. If it was a lot of fun, they wouldn't pay you so much money. And the other thing is the person paying you money wants to get value out of you from their perspective, so they often make you work more than you want. So I would also say a big thing I've noticed in happiness is if I can get done at a reasonable hour for the day, like 4 o'clock, I'm happy. And I got time to go home, lift weights, time to make a couple videos, read a paper real quick, spend some time with my girlfriend, talk to, my kid on the phone or something. That's a nice night for me. On the other hand, if it's super busy and I don't get home till 7 o'clock at night, I don't have time to do anything. Eat some food real quick, go to sleep, and that day stinks for me. Okay, don't get me wrong, I might have had fun time working, but what I'm saying is you have a much happier life if you have some work, personal life, and, academic job balance. Other things are, you're happy if you find somebody at least you like as a boyfriend, girlfriend, It's nice to have somebody around. You don't necessarily want them around all the time. You need some personal time to do your own stuff. But it's nice to have some of these good relationships. But I would also say a lot of it doesn't depend on who you are or what you are even. It depends on where you are. I've known that if I'm in a place where there's a lot of women around, I'll end up with a real nice girlfriend. I also know if I'm in a place where there's almost no women around, like at Stanford, I never had a girlfriend at Stanford for 4 years. At my medical school, I never dated a single girl except I dated one pharmacology professor who I really liked for a while. But those are lonely, bad environments. So if you don't think an environment is right for you socially, try to get out of there because that's hard to fix. All right, so anyways, continuing now, he says, these are hardly new ideas about social life and happiness. Aristotle said it a long time ago, that man is a social animal. Okay, here's the next one. This is a good one. The pursuit of happiness is not about seeking pleasure, but about finding a purpose. That is good. And, Thomas Shaw is the great psychiatrist. Him and Bregan, the two greatest psychiatrists that ever lived. He said what heals people is meaning, having purpose and meaning in your life. That's what makes you happy. Schopenhauer had said, too, forget about happiness. It's impossible to just find happiness by seeking happiness. Try to have a heroic life, and then you'll respect yourself, and then you'll be happy. Okay, here's another quote by Deresiewicz. It is hard to build your soul when everyone around you is trying to sell theirs. Yeah, that's how I feel about being a low-fat vegan. Everybody's trying to pressure me to be one of the sellout, moderate-fat, high-fat, phony type vegans, and I'm not going to do it. And the price I pay is ostracized, all these trolls, all this criticism, all this BS. So, and being shadow, bond, okay, that's the price you pay from telling the truth. But I think you have to have Christian ethics or something that makes you want to do right, to play it right. Otherwise, all the pressure is to sell out and get the fast money and be socially accepted. That's also why I think healthcare could never be improved unless it takes Christian ethics. And it's never going to do that because the people who run it know they would lose money, so they'll never allow that. So it's never going to get fixed. So you as an individual have to fix yourself on your own and occasionally go to the doctor for acute problems or some rare stuff. Okay, Deresiewicz continues. The only way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service to others. And there's some truth in that, in the sense that a lot of times we're happiest when we do things that help other people. And part of that's because I think you get reward neurotransmitters released in your brain when you do something to help other people. And I think it's from the context of our ancestors that when they do things that help others in their group likes them more and accepts them more and does more for them indirectly, karma, whatever you want to call it, so that They get reward neurotransmitters released to make them feel better about doing those things. We enjoy doing nice things for other people. That's a good thing. And other people have said this. Dr. McDougall said it. Is what makes him happy is to help other people. And there's a lot of truth in that. When you help others, you don't just help them. You help yourself. Okay, Deresiewicz continues. Life is not about finding yourself. It's about creating yourself. Yeah, and Thomas Schaus said something very similar to that. So basically, and Kierkegaard talked along those lines as well. You sort of, by trying different things, you learn to figure out what you like, what you care about, what you want to focus on, and you become good at it over time. And that's, in a sense, a combination of finding yourself and creating yourself. Okay, here's a good quote from Deresiewicz. He says, self-knowledge is the most practical thing in the world because it helps you to understand, it helps you to find your way to a career that's right for you. Right. So I think that's why it's good to spend time analyzing, why do I like this bird watching class? Why did I not like my economics class? Okay. Why do I like talking to these guys? And why do I not like talking to these guys? Because I found I took all these environmental classes, like where we went on all these field trips to Yosemite and the other national parks. And I really liked the biology. I liked the guys I went bird watching with and the naturalists and the serious biologists. But I didn't like the environmentalists because they were always, against the farmer, against the regular people. And so I didn't like that because I liked farmers. But anyways, I hope these quotes from Deresiewicz were helpful to you. I thought they were good, and I like this idea of his sentence structure. Life's not about finding yourself. This sentence structure about X is not about Y, X is about Z. It's a good sentence structure. I got to keep that in mind as a template for future writing. So anyways, hope you enjoyed that.